Thanks very much indeed, Ruth, and it's a delight for me to also be able to join in and see so many familiar faces that I know and so many faces of people from other parts of the diocese that I haven't had a chance yet to meet. Thank you for being part of this family and being part of what we're about tonight. We have got a number of slides that we're just going to be going through. I'm going to ask Charlie if he can start to get those running for us, please. Because it just helps us to go through to make sure we don't miss some of the key points that we would like to make as we go through this evening. We're looking tonight at the APCMs and the meetings of parishioners. Technically, those are two separate meetings. As you know, they usually take place at the same time on the same day. And that's where the annual meeting of parishioners is the one where we elect wardens, and then the annual parochial church meeting is the annual meeting of the church, if you like. Normally, we have to complete all of our APCMs by, it used to be the 30th of April every year. Last year, with the new church representation rules, it was extended through until the end of May, the 31st of May 2020. However, we were in lockdown from the middle of March, and most churches who try to do their APCM usually sometime in April or sometime they could have pushed it through to May in 2020. We were all in lockdown. There was no possibility of doing that. And so Bishop Christopher, who is the person who can create an instrument, a legal instrument, created one last year. So there was a delay put in initially until October 2020, because of course that's when the whole of the pandemic was going to be over and life was going to be able to continue as normal. Oh, that would have been a nice idea, wouldn't it just? And then of course that had to be extended further because we realized that actually we were not going to be able to have public meetings in quite the same way. So it was pushed forward until 2021 was the date that the 2020 APCMs needed to take place by. What that means is that if you haven't already held your 2020 APCM, then that needs to be held. It needs to be held before May the 31st of this year. Some of you will be thinking, yeah, but we got another APCM for 2021 to take place anyway. And because there's going to be no further extensions on that, it's going to be possible for us to hold both the 2020 and the 2021 APCMs. They both need to be completed by the 31st of May this year. You will have seen the Bishop of Southwark's instrument that set all that up, and there was a frequently asked questions document that went along with that at the time. And if we move on to the next slide, Charlie, it just reminds us that actually although we do have two meetings, they can be held on the same day. However, they are two completely different meetings. They need to be handled separately, and they need to be minuted separately. What that means is that your church accounts for 2019 to 2020 and then 2020 to 21 need to be handled separately like that. You can't bundle them together and hold them together as a single meeting. I hope that makes some sense to, we've had that information for a while, and I hope you understand what that means. So you can advertise the fact that you're holding both meetings on the same day, but you actually have a separate agenda for the 2021 and the 2021 one. Can I just remind you of one of the preliminaries that we're asked to do as part of safer recruiting? The Church of England nationally has another document about safer recruiting. It's called Safer Recruiting Practice Guidance 2016. I haven't got it on the screen here, on this particular part of the screen, but what it says is that anybody taking office in a church as a PCC member or a church warden and such like, they are all expected to complete a confidential declaration. And here you've got a copy of the confidential declaration that anybody who is on the PCC or applying to be a member of PCC or church warden or any other office that's held it's everybody's asked to complete. You may be wondering, well, where's that? How do we get a hold of that? Well, conveniently, you all know about it, and year on year, by and large, you've been ticking it off. It's a part of our A Safer Church big file that usually at the APCM is accepted year on year about what we do. We quite often, when we're talking with church wardens, encourage them to please try and remember to bring part of Safer Church into the PCC meetings on a regular basis, to look at some of the things that it says, to remind us about what we need to be doing at a regular basis. And one of the things that came in, it's over 5 years ago now, was this request that all church members who are standing for office do fill in this confidential declaration form. If somebody's applying, and you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to complete this in advance of standing for office. That helps us in case there's a glitch for some reason and somebody is appointed to an office, and then we find that actually for some reason there's something that needs to be looked at a little bit further down the line. So you're asking everybody to complete one of these, please, before they stand for PCC or other church office. If something comes up on that, then normally there's a question that goes to our safeguarding team in the diocese, and they deal with that. On to the next slide, please, Charlie. So what we realized initially was that we couldn't hold meetings in person. So we then started to look at the possibilities of online meetings, and the instrument that Bishop Christopher's distributed actually allows for that as we go forward. One of the things that some people said was, well, some people want to come to a meeting, but actually we haven't got very much space. We can't get everybody in. Can we do something online? Can we do something mixed mode? That means doing it both and, partly in person and partly online live. And it is possible to do that. Meetings can take place now if you've got a business to run, or if you've got a charity to run, or something else like that. But they need to take place under the appropriate COVID-19 precautions that we all need to have in place. If your church isn't ready yet to hold these sorts of meetings in person, then the meeting can take place online. And as I say, as you see down there in the third bullet point, some parishes may plan to hold their meetings in mixed mode. Some people present in a church or the church hall, some people watching the rest of it online. And so as you're thinking through that, as PCC secretaries, parish administrators, parish clergy who are involved in chairing these things, the church wardens as well, just think through the technicalities. You can do all your voting online. What does that mean for you? How are you going to handle that? How are you going to double check and make sure that your processes are as good as they need to be for you? If you've got questions about that, some of those are answered in the frequently asked questions. If you've got further questions about that, then do come back to Charlie in the office or your local archdeacon, whatever it may be. Moving on from that to the next slide. Church wardens are obviously elected at the annual meeting of parishioners, and some churches managed to have their meeting last year. And then there was the question about, well, how do we admit church wardens to their office at this stage? Well, we're aware of the additional pressures that all wardens have taken, and my word, they have been marvellous. It's been really helpful. I know that speaking to many clergy, they've been very grateful for all the work that wardens and other key lay leaders in the parishes have put. We want to say a big thanks to all those who have been serving, but we're also aware that a lot of churches are looking to perhaps having some difficulty in appointing church wardens this time around. I think it's one of those things you're going to need to look at and very carefully think through what we may be wanting to do in your parish to try and help make sure that you've got wardens who are able to stand this next year. There's also the issue that we didn't have last year, and it looks like we're not going to be able to have for some time yet, any of the large visitation services where lots and lots of the wardens come together and are admitted together. And what was allowed for last year was that this could take place locally, either through the minister taking part or through the area dean and the archdeacon, or the archdeacon involved at a local place. But this needs to actually take place at some way in person. There needs to be an in-person meeting between the person, the warden being admitted, and the person who is admitting them on behalf of the bishop. I think if we can go on to the next slide, Charlie. Incidentally, if you've got some questions about this, please just jot them down on a note, and we've got a chance for answering some questions in a moment or two. You may have some issues in trying to work out all the dates and times. You've got your idea about when you want to hold the APCM, and then there's all those other things you need to line up in advance of that. If you have problems working out all these deadlines for electoral roll revision and notices for meetings, etc., we have a new APCM date calculator tool. It's accessible via the APCM page on the website. You can see where there's a little picture at the top of this slide that says, click on this link. And if you click on that link, then you get to this. Here we are. Here's a parish that's deciding to put their APCM on the very last day that you can fit it in, the 31st of May. And as soon as you put in that date of your APCM, then what this page does is it populates automatically for us all the other dates that you need to have to line up all the various bits and pieces for your various timings for when the electoral roll needs to be done, when the revision needs to be posted up publicly, all those sorts of things. So that's some of the nuts and bolts to help us with the APCMs, looking forward to fitting either just for this year or for last year and this year combined as you come forward to it. Okay, I think that moves on. Can we move on to the next one? Any questions? So I think we could probably take the slides down and stop screen sharing at this moment. I do note, though, that Charlie's email address is there. It's also in the diocesan directory. You will have had emails from him, I suspect, regularly as well. And I wonder if you've got any particular questions that we would like to answer tonight. If you have, then try sticking up a hand. You can do that by going to the reactions section, and there's a bit that says raise a hand there, because we've got so many people on. I've got 4 screens of people, can't see all the screens at once. So if you can click on that, otherwise we may be able to see a hand waving. Yeah, I've got Alice Winter has got a hand waving there.
Hi, yeah, actually my name's Sue. I can't, it doesn't allow you to change the name.
I'm sorry about that, Sue.
No, I just would have changed it otherwise. Can you just clarify, because we're going to hold both APCMs on the same date, how do we fill in that page that you just did? Because presumably you would just only do it for the 2021 APCM. If you put in last year's date, it wouldn't work, would it?
No, that's right. If you're holding them both together on the same day, you put in this year's date and it'll populate it for you backwards like that.
Do you have to do all the same documents twice because you're holding 2 APCMs? You know, you said you have to put a poster on the door and all. Do you have to do all of those documents, double them up?
I think what you're trying, you may be able to do it on the one form like that, but I think what you're trying to make clear to everybody there is that actually you're holding the 2021 and the 2021 one. So you may be able to do it just on the one sheet, the publicity saying it's the both meetings, or you may need to have the 2 side by side, but making it clear that they're taking place at the same day, same time.
So legally, you don't have to do 2 pieces of paper?
I think so long as whatever paper you put up there makes it clear that you're holding both together, that will do fine.
Okay, thanks.
I think we're in COVID times. We're trying to do our best to fit in with the legalities as far as we can. I've got somebody called Sue, and I think I've got Ruth waving a pencil as well. So we'll take Sue and then we'll take Ruth.
Thank you. On the agenda, there was a bullet point in this section about online electoral roll and deanery rep forms.
Charlie,
do I need to worry about those?
Charlie, do you want to just come in with that?
Yes, it was my absolute hope and dream to have those put online this year, but the letters had to go out at a certain time and I wasn't able to complete it. But it does mean that next year you will be able to do all of these things online and not have to have the SG7 form, the SG forms to send it back. And it's actually, it's already pretty much done. And what it does is you fill them in the parish, and it will automatically send an email to the deanery secretary and to us with the list of names of your deanery reps and the electoral roll.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you.
It'll be next year.
Okay, I'll hold my breath. Thank you.
Don't hold it for a whole year, though, please. Ruth.
Just a question about the confidentiality form. Is that to be filled in annually or only if you have new PCC members standing?
I think it is to be filled in every time somebody is standing for an office. So I think for church wardens, for example, who are elected every year, they need to fill that in. That's because it's only current on the day that it's done, isn't it? It's a bit like a DBS. The DBS is technically only for the day that it is, even though there's a sort of an understanding that it can last for a while. So I think anybody who's standing, that's what we ask them to do.
Thank
you. It's Jean Dowd as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the forms that Charlie sent out last week. We still fill these in manually for the electoral roll certificate.
Yes.
And
please.
the one for the deanery and the diocese with the names of the diocesan reps on.
Yes, please, and then send them back to us.
Okay, fine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have we got any other questions anybody wants to ask? Sue Waits. You're still on mute, please, Sue. That's it.
Sorry. Our PCC secretary resigned suddenly at the end of January, so I'm sort of coming to this cold, and I realise we've talked about forms a little bit, but do we need to retrospectively do forms for church wardens and other offices 2020 and 2021 as they become due?
Sorry, can you just say the question one more time, please? I got a glitch on the line and missed part of your question.
Okay. It's about the forms for proposing church wardens and election of church wardens. Do we need to do the ones for 2020 retrospectively as well as doing ones for this year?
I think I understand.
Or are you frozen?
What I would imagine, I think what we would imagine is the answer to that is yes, that actually you are electing wardens for 2020 and for 2021.
Yeah.
It's possible that some of those are going to be the same people. Technically, I suppose it's imaginable that somebody could be elected and stand down on the same day and somebody else be elected as the warden who's going to carry on. But I think what we're needing to show the legal process of is we have held elections and we can show who the wardens were for each of those various years. It sounds a wee bit clumsy.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Then David Williams and then Esther Baradell.
Sorry, just unmuting myself. We had our APCM last year. We actually held it, a mixture of online and virtual. And we actually had deanery synod elections. Presumably we don't need to have those elections again this year, but do we still have to fill in all the details on the back of the SG forms that Charlie sent out?
My understanding is that, yes, if you've done that last year, you have done it, and that's going to be able to carry forward. And because we haven't got another way of doing the online forms at this stage, yes, please, it's the SG forms for this year. Is that correct, Charlie?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, David. Esther, you're still on mute.
Thank you. The confidential declaration form, is it possible to download that from the diocesan website at all?
It is. If you go to the safeguarding page and documents to download there, you will find it there. It's actually identified as the confidential declaration. In the actual folder itself, it is something like appendix number 20 or something like that, as far as I remember.
Okay, thank you.
I don't see any other hands up now.
somebody up
Wait a
here.
minute, I've got somebody, it says Sarah waving a pen, but it doesn't look like Sarah to me.
No, hiding behind an alias, but using my wife's address. Can I just take you back when you talked about the Archdeacon's visitations?
Yeah.
For both the last year, I didn't quite understand how it's going to happen. We haven't had, our wardens haven't been involved either for last year or for the coming year. How is that going to happen?
Okay, so Bishop Christopher, actually, to be quite honest, even the archdeacons do it on behalf of the bishop. It's become a sort of a common practice to assume that the archdeacons do that, and it really helps cement the really important relationship between church wardens and archdeacons anyway. So that's why we have the services in the way that we do, and quite often link it with some training in that. But actually, Bishop Christopher is able to allow other people to admit church wardens. And so last year, those who had elected church wardens,
sorry, poor Alistair.
Parish clergy, and to the area dean. Sorry?
Sorry, you broke up there, Alistair.
It's the marvels of Wi-Fi, isn't it? Yeah. Bishop Christopher sent a form that went to the clergy and to the area deans last year, permitting them to admit church wardens locally at parish church level or at deanery level as necessary. Just to remind that this is something that needed to take place in person and can't take place over Zoom. They need to be present when the actual takes place.
So if that didn't take place last year, which it didn't in our case, what is going to happen? Are we going to have to attend 2 of these, or can our own vicar be authorised to admit?
As I understand it, your vicar is already authorised to do it, and if they want to know more about that, do get back in touch with the archdeacon. The archdeacon will help you to do that. Last year's ones can be admitted immediately. And then as soon as you've elected this year's wardens, they can be admitted in that way too.
Lovely, thank you very much.
Trevor?
Hello. The confidential declaration form, in this particular application of it, who should be the data controller?
That's a good question. I think it's the data controller is probably your safeguarding officer in the parish. And then if there's a question mark that comes from that, then the question goes to the diocesan safeguarding team.
So that's who we should ask people to send. So the PCC secretary doesn't need to collect those forms. They need to go to the safeguarding officer. I
think it's whatever your practice is to do with confidential declaration forms. They're there to be used for a number of roles already. You're probably used to using them, or at least I hope your PSO will be used to using them. So using the safeguarding officer will be the starting point.
Lovely, thank you.
I see someone called John Rusk with a hand up. It doesn't look like a John to me.
No, my husband. We share the computer. I belong to an ECC with the Methodists. So our safeguarding comes under the Methodist side. And they do fill in forms, so the forms are all filled in, but they're not done through the PCC, they're done through the ECC. Is that acceptable, or would you like a set of forms done for the PCC side of it, for confidential?
I think that's a really useful question. It's quite a niche question, and I'm not sure we've got the time to go into it in much detail tonight. I think that's a question that would be quite helpful to ask the safeguarding team and work out how best to handle it in your local situation. Do you want to get back in touch with your archdeacon and the safeguarding team and just work out how best to handle that?
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much.
That's good.
I can't see any other hands waving at the moment. Anybody else? Oh, yes, Petra Borbley's got a hand up.
May I please ask, do you know what the youngest age is for someone to join the PCC, please?
Oh, Charlie.
That's a Charlie question. I think is it 16?
I think it is 16 for PCC, 21 for Church Warden, I believe.
I think it's got I think it's got the ages on the back of the application forms.
Yeah.
It does on the back, on the SG, on the registration forms. It should be on there.
It's 16.
That's good. I don't think there's many more questions. I hope everybody's getting comfortable with the church representation rules and your little green books for 2020 with the adjustments in there. Yeah.
Good, thank you.
Good.
Charlie, were there any other questions that we need to pick up generally?
Have we done the online date tool?
Yes.
Great.
Yes. There was one I emailed you, Alistair, which if I can, I'm on Zoom, so I've got to use my iPad.
Yeah, and I've been on other Zoom meetings all afternoon as well and haven't had a chance to see. Let me see. Can you ask the question regarding the process on how to elect deanery synod reps in the case of us having 2 APCMs consecutively on the 25th of April? How long will the terms be, as they would already serve 1 year by 2021? Right. I think what we're doing is, even if you're electing them for the first time in 2021, we're fitting into the timetable that is the current 3-year timetable. So they're going to be deemed to have already served a year, even though they may have only just started. I think that...
So yes, that's right. That was the only other one that was sent to me previously.
That's great. Okay, thank you. We'll try and update our frequently asked questions with other things as they come. And I don't know, have we got those online somewhere with the APCM material, Charlie? I think we might have. And if not,
the Archdeacon's letter and the frequently asked questions are on the APCM section of the website. And I've been collating some of the questions that have been coming through so we can update them with some of the more abstract questions that we've been getting as well.
So that means that if you've got a question, then even though you've had the form, you've had something circulated before, just check the one that's on the website, because that may be even more up to date. Somebody else might have asked your question. Good, thank you. I think that deals with the governance and the APCM side.
Thank you very, very much, Alistair. And it's amazing what queries. I'm sure there's lots of queries that were raised that other people had. And so it's wonderful. Thank you so much for everybody who had questions for Alistair, because I'm sure we've all learnt a lot from the questions that our colleagues have raised.